Today, we're diving into what feels like a true crime story from the world of medicine. We're opening the case file on the ASTER trial, an investigation into a simple vitamin, a deadly disease, and a scientific experiment that took a turn nobody saw coming.
Okay, so let's get right to the heart of it. The one big question that drove this whole thing: could something as basic as vitamin C, the stuff in oranges, actually be a secret weapon against one of the deadliest conditions in any hospital? To really get what's at stake, you have to understand the villain of this story: sepsis. It's not the infection itself that's the killer. It's the body's own response, this absolutely catastrophic, full-blown overreaction that starts attacking its own organs. It's brutal, it's fast, and doctors are always on the hunt for a better way to fight it.
And this brings us to what I'm calling the vitamin C conundrum. I mean, it seems like a pretty unlikely hero, right? But there were these little hints, these whispers in the scientific community that high doses of it might just help. The only problem? The evidence was completely all over the map.
You see, some of the earlier studies on this basically came up empty. They showed no real benefit. But then, a totally different trial suggested it might actually save lives in patients with severe lung injury, which is a huge complication in sepsis. So, which is it? Does it work or not? And that's exactly the kind of puzzle scientists can't resist trying to solve.
So to get that clear answer, researchers sat down and designed a brand new, super carefully controlled experiment. They called it the ASTER trial. The whole point was to cut through all that noise and confusion and find out what was really going on.
The setup was a classic. Think of it like a scientific taste test. They split critically ill patients into two groups. Group A got the real deal, a high dose of vitamin C, ascorbate, put directly into their veins. Group B got a placebo, which was basically just a bag of sugar water that looked exactly the same. That way, any difference they saw between the groups had to be because of the vitamin. Now, here's a really crucial detail. This was a relatively small study. We're talking about just 79 patients. This wasn't designed to be the final, definitive answer on the topic. It was more like a deep, careful investigation to see if there was a signal, something strong enough to justify a much bigger, much more expensive trial down the road.
So everything was moving along just as planned, but then the ASTER trial's story takes this completely dramatic plot twist. This is the moment where an event from the outside world just crashes the party and changes absolutely everything.
The investigators were doing everything by the book. Patients were getting their treatments, the data was being carefully recorded, and everyone was just waiting to see what the numbers would say when it was all over. Standard procedure.
But while all this was happening, a totally separate and much, much larger study called the Lovich trial, which was also looking at vitamin C for sepsis, published its results, and let me tell you, the news was not good.
And because of what that other trial found, the researchers running the ASTER study made a really tough but really fast decision. They pulled the plug. The whole investigation was shut down, right in the middle of everything.
And if you're wondering why, well, this quote from their paper says it all. The Lovich trial didn't just find that vitamin C was useless, it actually suggested it might be causing harm. And when that kind of evidence comes out, everything else stops. The absolute #1 rule in medicine is patient safety. You just can't keep giving people a treatment when another major study says it might be dangerous.
So the trial gets cut short, but that doesn't mean all the data they collected was worthless. Not at all. Now it was time for the investigators to put on their detective hats and analyze the clues they did manage to gather before the case was suddenly closed.
So imagine you're a detective, and your boss just slams the case file shut on your desk. What do? You look at the evidence you already have, right? So what exactly did they find in that file? All right, the main thing they were looking for, the primary outcome, was whether vitamin C helped patients get off things like ventilators or kidney dialysis any sooner. And the answer was, not really. The vitamin C group got about 20.5 days free of organ support. The placebo group got 19. I mean, look at those two bars. They're practically the same height, so no clear win there.
But then they looked at a different clue. How many people had died after 90 days? And this is where things get wild. Just look at that difference. In the vitamin C group, only 15% of patients died. In the placebo group, 33%. That is a huge, dramatic-looking difference.
But, and I can't stress this enough, this is a massive but in the world of science, that incredible finding came with a giant asterisk. It wasn't statistically significant. It had a p-value of 0.057. So what on earth does that even mean?
Okay, the easiest way to think of a p-value is as a coincidence score. The lower that number, the more sure you can be that what you're seeing is a real effect, and not just some random fluke. In science, the magic number is usually below 0.05. That's your smoking gun. A score of 0.057, like this one, is so incredibly close. It's the kind of thing that makes a researcher raise an eyebrow and go, but it's just not low enough to declare victory. It could still be chance.
So, digging a little deeper, the team found a few other biological clues. For one, vitamin C did seem to lower a key marker of inflammation in the body, which is a good thing. And, really importantly, they didn't find any of the major safety problems that the other trial had warned about, except for one patient who unfortunately developed a kidney stone.
So, after all of that, where does this leave us? What's the final verdict on vitamin C from this trial? Well, the answer is, it's still a medical mystery.
This case file summary really nails it. On the main charge, preventing organ failure, the case was pretty weak. On the question of saving lives, the clue was super intriguing but ultimately inconclusive. They did find some good supporting evidence that it reduced inflammation. So what's the overall verdict? Mistrial. The investigation was stopped before a real conclusion could be reached.
And hey, don't just take it from me. The researchers themselves say exactly that in their final report. They are crystal clear. The trial did not show the main benefit they were hoping for, and because it was so small and got stopped early, you have to take every single finding with a huge grain of salt.
So the case file on vitamin C and sepsis is still wide open. And honestly, this is the perfect example of how science really works most of the time. It's not usually some big eureka moment. It's messy. It's a slow, careful process of collecting clues, one piece of evidence at a time. And that leaves us with this one last, really fascinating question to think about. When you have one huge study that suggests something is harmful and another smaller study that hints it might actually be a miracle cure, what do? What does it take for science to finally sort through all that noise and solve the mystery for good? That is the challenge that sits right at the very heart of making medical progress.